Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy. And in today's video, I'm bringing you guys a Dynasty mock draft on Fantasy Pros Draft Wizard. In this video, we are going to be doing a, obviously, Dynasty mock draft and are going to be talking about my overall draft strategy when it comes to Dynasty drafts, how I feel about players in Dynasty, which is going to be much different to how I feel about players in redraft leagues. Is it completely different? Not really, but obviously age does play a big part in Dynasty Fantasy Football League. So if you guys do end up enjoying this video, you want more fantasy football content, please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. Not only is it free, I put out content every single day surrounding around fantasy football. I talk about some Dynasty Fantasy Football, talk about the NFL draft, as well as NFL breaking news. So make sure to hit that subscribe button if you do enjoy. Again, this is a Dynasty PPR mock draft, but we are going to be doing SuperFlex since a majority of Dynasty leagues at this point are SuperFlex. I understand some leagues aren't, but every league I have played in is SuperFlex, and based upon the comments that I've got last year when I was doing these mock drafts, a majority of people play SuperFlex. We're doing a 12-team SuperFlex mock draft. Now, if I'm being honest with you guys, the ideal spot, in my opinion, in a SuperFlex Dynasty mock draft, well, I should say really real draft, startup draft, would be to be, I'd say, early on in the draft. Really, any spot is good, but I like to go for the double quarterback early on strategy, and the 5 spot might not be as ideal for that. The draft is 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wideouts, a tight end, flex, and then a super flex, kicker, defense, and 8 bench spots. Now, obviously, real Dynasty startup drafts do last longer than 8 bench. There's about 1 million benches, but for the case of a video, I don't want to go super duper long. It will only be 8 bench spots. So if you guys have questions about players that I do not talk about in this video, make sure you ask down below in the comments section. So let's get into it. I also put the positional value on Fantasy Pros to have the quarterbacks to be highly to very highly positionally valued, meaning that they're going to draft quarterbacks more, because even when you set it to Superflex, they don't really draft as much like humans do in Superflex Dynasty League. So we are going from the 5th overall spot in this Dynasty Superflex mock draft. So the beginning of the draft begins with Patty Mahomes, followed by Christian McCaffrey, Deshaun Watson, and Dalvin Cook. Now, I understand Deshaun Watson probably won't be the 2nd highest quarterback coming off the board in many drafts, and frankly, coming from a Dynasty standpoint, I do not want anything to do with Deshaun Watson. What can you trade him for? Frankly, I do not know. I'm seeing a lot of people trade him away for much less than I would like to, but again, with a situation with a player who may not legitimately ever play in the NFL again, it is very hard to decide what to do with that guy if you have him on your team. So Pat Mahomes, CMC, Watson, and Dalvin Cook are the first 4 picks of the draft. Not very surprising that 2 quarterbacks go this early. Again, probably won't be Deshaun Watson in your guys' drafts. Will likely be a guy like Kyler Murray or Josh Allen. So we're sitting here at the 5 spot, and I am going to be very happy here to select a quarterback that is going to be on my team for a very long time, and that is quarterback Just kidding. I was going to go with Justin Herbert. That was only a joke. We're going to go with Josh Allen. Josh Allen is definitely not the youngest quarterback in the NFL, but he is still very young. I think there's an easy debate between who to pick here in Kyler, Josh Allen, Dak, Lamar, and Justin Herbert. I think they are all in a similar tier and are all very young quarterbacks in the NFL. Obviously, some people will just draft Justin Herbert based off of age. That, in my opinion, is not how you should be drafting Dynasty leagues. I think you have to understand that Dynasty leagues, while they're supposed to be forever, a majority of the ones you guys play in will not last forever. And you have to kind of assume 2 to 3 years out is how you want to build this team. You don't want to sell your whole fucking team for picks in 2027 because, frankly, I don't think you can do that. But also, a majority of leagues will not last that long. So you got to make sure that you're not planning 10 years out. You're just planning a couple of years in the future. And I think that Josh Allen is going to be an excellent quarterback from now and to the future. I understand, oh, Nick, I like Kyler better. I like Herbert better, blah, blah, blah. To me, that's not what it's all about. I'm going to take the guy that I like the most in Josh Allen, quarterback out of Buffalo. I have seen enough. This guy's accuracy has been going up year in and year out. And with the addition of Stephon Diggs that we saw last year, this offense is dangerous like Russell Wilson. So after we went ahead and drafted Mr. Russell Wilson, or not Russell Wilson, who I just brought up, Mr. Josh Allen, we see Saquon Barkley come off the board, followed by Kyler Murray, Jonathan Taylor, Dak Prescott, Alvin Kamara, Devontae Adams, Nick Chubb, Tyreek Hill, Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, A.J. Brown, Cam Akers, and D.K. Metcalf. Now, obviously, what I said earlier about having the strategy of I like to get 2 quarterbacks early on, that doesn't mean that if the value is here, you have to slam dunk a pick on quarterback. Personally, I think it's fun to draft 2 quarterbacks early because the quarterback position is so much more fucking pumped up in SuperFlex leagues, especially in Dynasty leagues, because even a quarterback that isn't the greatest, you can trade and get much more at another position for because of how important it is to have 2 quarterbacks that you can start on your roster. Nothing super interesting here in these picks. Joe Burrow did go early, though, in my opinion. I definitely think Herbert should go ahead of Joe Burrow. I think Joe Burrow will be good, but I think overall the Chargers are a much better situation for fantasy success, at least next year, in my opinion. So now we are back up on the board, and with Herbert here, to me, it is simply a no-brainer. If Justin Herbert was not available right now, I probably would have leaned running back. DeAndre Swift, to me, does scare me a little bit, because it seems like Swift will never be the workhorse guy there, right? They're still going to involve the running backs around him. Is that terrible? No, but it is something to think about. Aaron Jones, Ezekiel Elliott, both not the youngest, but still not super old. J.K. Dobbins also would be considered here, but Herbert with the weapons in L.A., I just feel like this guy is going to tear it up yet again. I understand people talk about, oh, the sophomore slump, the second-year regression, but in my opinion, he had an instant regression because his coach has a regressing brain because that guy is a fucking idiot. Anthony Lynn is now gone. They bring in a new head coach, and I'm thinking Justin Herbert is going to be very good in 2021, so I like him a lot. Let me know down below what you guys think about Mr. Herbert, the pervert, inside of the second round. So now we're off the quarterback train. We're going to just be jumping on running backs and wide receivers from here on out until a little bit later in the draft. So after we went ahead and drafted Mr. Justin Herbert, Justin Jefferson came off the board, followed by Ezekiel Elliott, Travis Kelce, Antonio Gibson, George Kittle, DeAndre Swift, Stephon Diggs, and DeAndre Hopkins. Now, if you guys are playing in tight end premium leagues, which this is not, tight end premium leagues where the tight end gets an additional half point per catch, a guy like Kelce, a guy like Kittle are likely going to go higher up than this because that extra half point is going to boost their numbers very high to where they're potentially a top 10 wide receiver when the season comes to a close at the tight end position. Now we are up on the board here, and I want to get some running backs that I believe will be solid for my team for at least the next 2 years, and the number one guy that I'm looking at here is Aaron Jones. Now, the Green Bay Packers, while you think, oh, Aaron Rodgers is going to throw the ball 7 million times, it does not seem to matter because Aaron Jones gets it done year in and year out, back-to-back seasons with over 1,000 yards, over 10 touchdowns. Now, last year, going into 2020, guys were talking about, oh, Aaron Jones scored 19 touchdowns. That's impossible to do. He's not going to be able to repeat as a top 5 running back. He's not going to do this. He's not going to do that. And you saw what happened. You saw what happened. His touchdowns regressed. His yards went up. But he went from 19 touchdowns to 11 touchdowns. That's still pretty good. Still going to catch 40-plus balls. To me, it's a no-brainer. Aaron Jones is a lock in what should be a very volatile offense. Or not volatile, because that's kind of bad. You know, you don't want them to be volatile. He's more in a heat-seeking missile to the moon of an offense. Even with the fact that they should bring in a wide receiver, I still think Aaron Jones should be able to light it up in 2021 and beyond, to infinity and beyond. Shout out to Mr. Buzz Lightyear. If you guys have ended up enjoying this video thus far, you want more Dynasty content, more fantasy football content, please make sure that you hit that subscribe button down below. So after we went ahead and drafted my main man off the board, Aaron Jones, we see J.K. Dobbins come off the board, followed by CeeDee Lamb, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Calvin Ridley, Austin Eckler, Michael Thomas, Russell Wilson, Miles Sanders, Josh Jacobs, Darren Waller, 2 Las Vegas Raiders back-to-back, Terry McLaurin, Chris Carson, Aaron Rodgers, and Chris Godwin. Now, it's interesting to see where Aaron Rodgers is going to fall in ADP in Dynasty leagues, because while he's getting up there in age, he's likely going to be a top 10 quarterback, and he has top 5 upside. He won the MVP last year. But he's old, and that's going to scare some people away, so he falls to the 4th round. I wouldn't be surprised if he fell further in a decent amount of drafts. We're at the point here where I feel like the quarterbacks are kind of wishy-washy to be picking in the 4th round. While I do like Tannehill, and I do like Stafford, I'm kind of in on Hurts. I like Tua, but it's like, do I really want to waste a 4th round selection on those guys? Now, I already have 2 quarterbacks, so I don't have to. And that's kind of the reason why I draft 2 quarterbacks early, so I'm not really stuck in this mid-range of quarterback where I'm not necessarily sure how their career is going to end up panning out. So now we are back up on the board here. Our roster so far, we have Monsieur Josh Allen, Monsieur Justin Herbert, and Ron Jones. So we are going to snag yet another running back. Now, I understand that a lot of people are not on the Joe Mixon train, and I'm not saying that I am all aboard it either. But I believe they will fix the offensive line. They will build a fucking wall in front of Joe Mixon, and he's going to be able to actually run the ball. I'm not saying that you have to pick him here. It's definitely between him and David Montgomery, because James Robinson, to me, while I like him, I'm a bit worried that 2 years from now, maybe even next year, they bring in more competition, he gets riddled out, maybe he was just a one-year wonder. While I'm willing to take the risk in a redraft league, in Dynasty, I'm kind of staying a little bit away from James Robinson. Again, I still think he's going to be good, but there are some question marks. Joe Mixon has proved that he's been good in the NFL. It's just the fact that the line sucks so much ass. So I'll happily draft Joe Mixon here at the 408, but I would debate going with David Montgomery of the Chicago Bears, but with Tariq Cohen coming back, the receptions are not going to be there anymore for him. So after we drafted Mr. Joe Mixon, we see T. Higgins come off the board, which is very interesting, mainly because I don't know what's going to happen in Cincinnati. I like the fact that I think they're going to build offensive line, but there's also potential that they draft Jamar Chase, right? Because of the narrative, oh, Burrow played with him in college. I don't think they will, but they could bring in another wide receiver that is going to make a huge oopsie-daisy of those who drafted T. Higgins in their dynasty drafts this early. After that, we see Allen Robinson, Ryan Tannehill, Trevor Lawrence, DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Amari Cooper, and Matthew Stafford. Now, the fact that Trevor Lawrence fell all the way to the 4th round is bullshit, obviously. He's going to be a top 2-round pick. Same thing probably potentially goes for a guy like Fields or Zach Wilson or Trey Lance, depending on where they land in the NFL draft. Now, as well, that means that a guy like Najee Harris, Travis Etienne, Javonte Williams, depending on where they get drafted in the NFL, they're probably already taken off the board at this point. I think about the 5th round would be fine for one of those guys if they fall to a not-so-hot situation, but I think if they end up in a really good spot, you're going to probably be seeing them come off the board in the 2nd or the 3rd round, so we're probably not going to be picking them, but it is interesting to talk about that. The wide receivers, though, they will go in a variety of spots. A guy like Jamar Chase, a guy like Jalen Waddle, Rashad Bateman, all these guys that you assume are going to go in the 1st round of the NFL draft. Really, with wide receivers, it depends where they end up landing, but I wouldn't say that it's a guarantee that they would have been taken off the board by now throughout the 5th round. So we do have 2 running backs. We do have 2 quarterbacks. Now it's time to dive in on the wide receiver train, but if James Robinson was here, I think I would be willing to take the risk and have him be my flex in this Dynasty League. I think that James Robinson has a whole lot of upside, given that they didn't bring someone in to compete with him this season. Eventually, it may end up happening. They may want to end up cutting ties with him, like they cut ties with Leonard Fournette, who was a very successful running back in Jacksonville. I do think James Robinson has very good 3-down potential as a workhorse back in the NFL, so I will consider drafting him here, and I will in the 5th round, but again, there is definitely some stranger danger when it comes to James Robinson the later you get into his NFL career. But we're still taking him. Fuck it. We'll do it live. Next up, after we drafted Mr. James Robinson, we're definitely going to be looking for some wideouts in the next round. After James Robinson came Jalen Hurts, Jamar Chase, Tua Tagovailoa, David Montgomery, Mike Evans, and my memory is not that good to the point where I could keep naming them off. After Tua, we saw Mr. David Montgomery, Mike Evans, Kenny Golladay, Brandon Ayuk, Cortland Sutton, Carson Wentz, Julio Jones, Adam Thielen, Chase Claypool, Najee Harris, and Baker Mayfield. Now, I am of the standpoint that Julio Jones is the greatest dynasty asset maybe ever in the 6th round. But Nick, last year he didn't perform all that well. Come on. He got hurt. He is what I would describe as the best value. Sure, he's not going to play probably 3 years from now, but I think he has at least another 2 years in the tank. And in the 6th round, if I'm getting a potential wide receiver 1, it's free real estate, as they would say in the meme. It's free. Just draft him. It makes a lot of sense. If he has top 10 potential and you can get him in the 6th round for maybe another 2 years, you just do it. After we went ahead and drafted James Robinson, now we are back up on the board, and the quarterback situation now is getting scary. Kirk Cousins, Matt Ryan, Jared Goff, Daniel Jones, Derek Carr, Tom Brady. Do you really want any of these guys? Tom Brady, I actually think, is also one of those guys like Julio Jones, where every single draft, I would just say fuck it and draft him in the 8th round. Fuck it. Because Tom Brady's going to play good again. I'm sorry to tell you, everyone who hates Tom Brady, me included, I hate Tom Brady, but he's going to play good again. And you know what you can do? When Tom Brady's a top 12 quarterback next year, a few weeks in, someone's quarterback's bound to go down. You know what you do? You say, hey, buddy, I got Tom Brady. And I want this guy. And I want this guy. I want this pick. I want this. I want that. And then you know what you do? You send him off. You already have your 2 quarterbacks. Hopefully you drafted some backup quarterbacks later. And now you lost Tom Brady, but you have a piece at another skill position that is going to help you. It is the most free move in fantasy football in Dynasty leagues. I did it last year. Traded Tom Brady for Stephon Diggs. Come on. It's that easy. Now, you're probably not going to be able to get a guy like Stephon Diggs after he played so well throughout the rest of the season and in the playoffs, but it is possible that you can get someone of pretty high value. So I'm going to go ahead and say that Tom Brady is one of those guys that I'm going to be heavily targeting in Dynasty drafts. I'll probably make a Dynasty trade target video or startup draft target video. So now we are back up on the board here, and we need to get some wideouts onto this team, and I am very happy selecting Bobby Trees to my roster. Now, Robert Woods is definitely not the youngest of the cats that we have drafted so far, but he's also not super old. Been in the league since 2013. Definitely has a couple more years left in the tank, and I think this Los Angeles Rams offense is going to be potent year in and year out with Matthew Stafford. Sean McVay came out and said, Stafford's our guy for the long term. No shit, man. You wouldn't have traded that many picks if you thought that Matt Stafford was a one-year rental. So Bobby Trees, Matthew Stafford, a combo like yin and yang. Let's get into it. We're definitely picking Mr. Robert Woods at this pick. After that, the 609. Very nice. We got Mr. If I Die, I Die. Mr. You Like That. Kirk Cousins. Shout out to Kirk Cousins. If you guys remember that shit before the season started last year, they were like, Kirk, how do you feel about COVID and playing in the 2020 NFL season? He said, if I die, I die. What an alpha male. That's how I felt playing fantasy. If I die, if I catch COVID watching this fucking game through the screen, I die because I love football that much. Shout out to Kirk Cousins. Very underappreciated quarterback in the NFL. I'm not saying he's amazing, but he kind of gets a little too much hate for his skill set, even if he's not the greatest. After that, we see Derek Carr, Deontay Johnson, Odell Beckham Jr., Cooper Kupp, Juju Smith-Schuster, Travis Etienne, and Kareem Hunt. Again, Travis Etienne probably going to be closer to like a 3rd round pick than a 7th round pick. So Odell Beckham Jr. going off in the 6-12. Now, you guys know if you've been watching my channel for a while, I just don't believe in Odell. We've seen the best of him. If he's in a Browns uniform next year, I just won't believe in him. They like to run the ball too much for him to really have an amazing season. I don't want anything to do with Mr. Odell Beckham Jr. Same thing goes with Juju. In Dynasty in the 7th round, that's some good value because, like, last year he was like a top 3 round pick. The year before that would have been the same thing. Obviously had a down season. There is potential for him to go on the up and up. Maybe, since it's a Dynasty League, we see him go to the Chiefs next year. Maybe. I don't know. I mean, he's an okay pick at that spot. We are back up on the board here. We're hopping back on the wide receiver train. Note that not a lot of tight ends have came off the board, even in tight end premium or non-tight end premium leagues, I would say. The tight ends are going to go off more heavy than we have seen thus far. I would assume in the 7th round, a guy like Andrews, Hawkinson, Fant, Goddard, Gesicki, all those guys probably would not be available on the board right now. So we're going to hop back on the receiver train. I do like Melvin Gordon, though, a lot here. But again, we already have so many running backs on the roster. We're probably going to go ahead here and select my guy in Tyler. Yeah, Boyd. Now, again, there's the worry of the fact that they end up drafting a wide receiver that I talked about with T. Higgins. And in that case, Boyd is probably fucked. So I'm going to go with a different name. A name of a player that is kind of down right now, but Jerry Jeudy was a hot player out of Alabama last year. Didn't play amazing, but did get the targets. Did play all right in some games. Had issues with dropping the ball. I think that should be fixed going into the 2021 season. While we don't know who the quarterback will be, it probably won't be Horsecock Drew Lock. And I think the upside is very high with Mr. Jerry Jeudy. Shout out to Jerry Jeudy. Going very low-key this season compared to where he was going in last year's draft. Tom Brady goes in the 7th round, so that guy fucking foiled my plan like I was in Scooby-Doo or something. That's where they do that, yeah, Scooby-Doo. So after we drafted Jerry Jeudy, baby Chark, baby Chark comes off the board, followed by Kyle Pitts, Tom Brady, Mark Andrews, Trey Lance, Jared Goff, Justin Field, Tyler Lockett, Rashad Bateman, A.J. Dillon, Will Fuller, Devontae Smith, and Deebo Samuel. When it comes to A.J. Dillon, there is no way in fuck I would waste a 7th-round pick on him because I don't think he will be the guy there until Mr. Guy I drafted, Aaron Jones, is gone. When's Aaron Jones going to be gone? Nowhere near soon, since he signed back a decent deal with the Green Bay Packers, so I'm not really all that bored on the A.J. Dillon trade. Interesting, with Kyle Pitts going at the 707, probably the best tight end prospect we have seen in a long time out of Florida. A lot of people say he is the best wide receiver in this class, and he plays tight end. I'm not necessarily saying that, but I am implying that he is very fucking good, and that it would make sense if he went in the 7th round of a lot of startup drafts. So we're back up on the board here. Could really go anyway, running back or wide receiver, but the falling value of Melvin Gordon in this round is just outstanding, with the potential to be a top 12 running back because they got rid of Phillip Lindsay. Phillip Lindsay was holding this man back because the system was not letting him kind of get away from it because they were both getting like 50-50 split week in, week out. Unless one was hurt, the other couldn't do good. When fucking Mr. Lindsay was missing a bunch of games this season, Melvin Gordon was really playing good to the point where I'm very confident in drafting him as long as they don't end up drafting a guy like Michael Carter or something to where the Denver Broncos become the same thing they were last year, and my call of Melvin Gordon being very good, like I believe, ends up being completely and utterly proved wrong. Now we are back up on the board at this pick. I'm probably going to recap a lot of the draft after this because I don't want the video to go for 7 hours. Melvin Gordon. After that was Laviska, Devontae Parker, Matt Ryan, Ronald Jones, Kenyon Drake, Damian Harris, Javonte Williams, and Denzel Mims. Laviska is an interesting pick, but I feel like they're also going to bring in another wide receiver that is a better weapon, in my opinion, than Mr. Laviska Shenault. So now we are in the 9th round, and with the quarterbacks kind of dipping down, here is when I'll draft my 3rd quarterback. I want to have 3 starters in the NFL, and I think Darnold on Carolina will never be a top 10 guy. I don't think, but I think he takes the leap up after sucking complete and utter penis on the Jets. He's going to go directly, look at that, I drew an arrow directly to the fucking moon. Sam Darnold is going to be very good in 2021, I think. Now, very good compared to his past. He wasn't that good in the past, right? 9 touchdowns to 11 interceptions. That's not good. 19-13. It's all right. 17-15. Not very good. But I think he will make the improvement in Carolina with the much better weapons, the much better head coach. Obviously talking about Adam Gase compared to what he would have had now in Saleh would have been much better. But again, getting rid of Adam Gase is what makes these players so much better. I've talked about this in yesterday's video. Devontae Parker. After fucking Gase is gone, he's amazing. Drake gets traded. From Gase to the Cardinals, balls out. Right? Tannehill. Traded for a fucking used condom. Tennessee is amazing. So I think Darnold has a chance to do that as well as a Cinderella story. I also like famous Jameis Ida W. Winston as well, but I'm not sold he is the long-term option in New Orleans. If he struggles this year, sadly, Jameis will probably be going back to becoming a backup in the NFL. So after we went ahead and made our pick of Mono Man Sam Darnold, we see that TJ Hawkinson came at the board, followed by Trey Sermon, Brandon Cooks, Raheem Mostert, Myles Gaskin, Hollywood Brown, Jarvis Landry, Michael Gallup, James Conner, Robbie Anderson, Zach Moss, Chase Edmonds, Leonard Fournette, and Tony Pollard. Now, Chase Edmonds is a very interesting pick inside the 10th round because his upside is tremendous, but that is obviously assuming they don't draft anyone. Because if they draft someone, Edmonds is going to get kicked back to either being in a committee or getting fucked and being the number 2 guy behind a guy like Javonte Williams, Najee Harris, or Travis Etienne. Again, it really depends on the NFL draft, but if all things go his way, Edmonds will be a sneaky play in the 10th round. We are back up on the board here. The running backs are dropping like flies, and I'm going to hop on a guy that I really like. Curtis Samuel signed a couple-year deal with the Washington football team, and I think with this season in mind, he should be very good. Next year, though, is when I don't know what's going to happen, because Fitzpatrick probably won't be the guy. Maybe Heineke's the guy, or maybe they draft a new guy, so that will be interesting, but I think this whole team is on a real fucking reverse after Ron Rivera took over last season, made the playoffs last year. Now, any team could have made the playoffs last year because of how shit the NFC East is, but I do believe that Curtis Samuel is a very good player, and with him being the easily number 2 wide receiver on this Washington football team roster, that provides a very strong area to get a decent amount of points because they didn't really have a wide receiver 2 behind Terry McLaurin in the past. So after we went ahead and drafted Mr. Curtis Samuel and Mono Man Sam, we see Henry Ruggs, Jalen Waddle, Jalen Reagor, double Jalen's back-to-back. Interesting enough, they spell their names wrong, or not fucking wrong, differently. Kenny Gainwell, Michael Pittman, Daniel Jones, Kylan Hill, and Darrell Henderson. I'm a little bit pissed that Darrell Henderson went ahead of me because I really like drafting Darrell Henderson, because I think if Akers was to go down, Darrell Henderson really has a big stranglehold on that backfield. But we are back on the board now, and we're not going to be able to get Darrell Henderson, but that's okay because I got another running back in mind here, and that is going to be Mr. Gus Edwards. I think Gus Edwards is going to be the backup there for a decent amount of time, at least one more year probably after this, and if Dobbins was to go down, then Edwards knows the team better than anyone else. He's the clear number 2 behind Mr. J.K. Dobbins, and we've seen him have success in the past. 700 yards 3 years in a row. Now, he's not an excellent starter week in, week out, but that's not what you're looking to draft when we're over here in the 11th round of a Dynasty startup draft. Now, David Johnson is interesting, but I think the wheels have truly fallen off, and that system of a triple-headed backfield, David Johnson, Mark Ingram, Phillip Lindsay, I don't want anything to do with that. No bueno, as they would say in Espanol. So after we went ahead and drafted Mr. Gus Edwards, Teddy Roosevelt came off the board, followed by Rondell Moore, David Johnson, Corey Davis, Zach Wilson's going to go way ahead of that. In real drafts, Devin Singletary, Jamar Jefferson, Noah Fant, Mike Williams, Michael Carter, Tariq Cohen, Dallas Goedert, Chuba Hubbard, and Mr. Nyheim Hines. Now we are back up on the board here. We still don't have a tight end, but again, I don't think a guy like Irv Smith or Mike Gesicki would fall this far. I'm going to pick them, but in this scenario, in the 12th round, I'm probably going to be drafting a guy like Tanyan, a guy like Cole Kmet, a guy like Logan Thomas, a guy like Hayden Hurst, one of those guys that falls that I think have pretty solid upside. But Irv Smith is a guy that I am a huge fan of. We saw last year when Kyle Rudolph, the red-nosed reindeer, was out that Irv Smith really excelled in this offense. I think, obviously, he is on a team that has very good offensive weapons, which might not be the best, but if they're able to move the ball a lot and into the red zone, I think Irv Smith could really be a touchdown monster in 2021. So we are going to select Minnesota tight end Irv Smith at the 12:08. After we went with Irv Smith, Rashad Penny came off the board, followed by John Brown, Alexander Madison, Phillip Lindsay, Gabriel Davis, Christian Kirk, and Mike Licky on Mike Gesicki. Now, there are defenses and kickers in this draft, which I didn't even realize. In Dynasty drafts, you don't need a defense or a kicker. Please tell your commissioner, no defenses, no kicker, because frankly, it's fucking annoying. It just is. A lot of defenses have to do with streaming. Now you have to draft 3 defenses. It's terrible. Same thing goes with kickers. It's just dumb. I apologize for not have noticing that earlier. The last 2 rounds of the draft will be kickers and defenses, and we don't really care about those, so I probably won't even end up drafting them and just talking about players in that round. So now it is our turn to pick. Now there is speculation of Anthony Miller getting traded for a 2nd round pick. Maybe if I click on this, we can actually see that. Will Fantasy Pros have it? Yeah. Anthony Miller. Bears having trade discussions regarding Anthony Miller. He has played pretty decent. Now, I'm not saying he's amazing, but in 2019 looked pretty good. Last year did struggle a bit, but I do think on the correct team he could be very good. But again, does that mean I'm going to select him here? No. but he is an interesting guy to talk about here. I'm going to go ahead and select Jeudy McKissic because I think at least this year he will have a lot of value, and if Antonio Gibson was to go down, he would be frankly amazing. So I think that Jeudy McKissic is kind of a no-brainer at this pick. I don't think he's necessarily a 5-year down the line running back, but again, it's hard to predict 5 years down the line, and it's hard to imagine your league may even be around 5 years down the line, like I said earlier on in the video. So we're going to draft Mr. J.D. McKisson Titties at this pick. After we went ahead and got Mr. J.D. McKissic, Hunter Henry came at the board, followed by Mac Jones, Ben Roethlisberger, Logan Thomas, Darius Slayton. Now, someone drafted the Ravens defense. That's funny. But again, guys, there should not be defenses in Dynasty drafts. It escaped my membrane just before I even started the draft. Mac Jones at the 1307. That's not going to happen as well. Mac Jones literally might be the 3rd overall pick in the NFL draft to the 49ers. So stay away from that take, in my opinion. After we went with Mac Jones, Big Ben came off the board, followed by Logan Thomas, Darius Slayton, Marvin Jones, Taysom Hill, Jamal Williams, Le'Veon Bell, Baltimore Ravens defense, Darnell, here comes the Monet, Robert Tonyan, Terrence Marshall, and Keyshawn Vaughn. Now we're back. We're going wide receiver, and I really want... Where are the free agents? The guys who have not been drafted yet. Down here. Dwayne Eskridge, Seth Williams. We're kind of at the point where these guys are not as good. Golden Tate's a free agent, but he's not. Tylan Wallace is a guy. Again, I haven't looked super deep in on Tylan Wallace, but I've heard some of the smarter guys in the industry talk up Tylan Wallace, so I'm willing to take the shot here. Again, these guys are very team dependent. If they go to a good team, maybe Baltimore, where you can see them starting year one, then maybe it's more, you feel more complacent taking them. So that's how I feel about it. Again, I am going to be continuing to do more research on the 2nd, 3rd round NFL talent guys. This guy's not going to even be 1st round in your startup league, but he will be maybe in the 2nd or 3rd round. I think Wallace has some decent upside, so I'll draft him in the 14th round. Again, I don't claim to be Tylan Wallace fucking... What is that called? Truther. I'm not a Tylan Wallace truther, but I am willing to draft him in a Dynasty mock draft. So after we went ahead and drafted Mr. Tylan Wallace, wide receiver, we can see that Lynn Bowden came at the board, followed by Evan Ingram, Sony Michel, Jameis Winston, New Orleans Saints defense, Jimmy Garoppolo, Larry Roundtree, and Cole Kmet. Now, if I'm being honest with you guys, don't be surprised if people are taking 4 or 5 fucking quarterbacks in your draft. Don't be surprised. Drew Lock, Cam Newton, Mr. Trubisky, I'm not taking any of these guys right now, but people are going to finish your drafts with potentially 6 quarterbacks when all things are said and done. So now we're back up on the board here. I want to get another tight end that I do kind of believe in Hayden Hurst in Atlanta, assuming Kyle Pitts doesn't get drafted there, because if he does, he derails completely the Hayden Hurst hype train in Atlanta. It is completely decimated if they bring him in, because Hayden Hurst will not be seeing the field that much because Kyle Pitts is a fucking offensive weapon. His position shouldn't be tight end. It shouldn't be wide receiver. It should be OW, offensive weapon, or OU, offensive unit. He's like Taysom Hill, but if Taysom Hill was a really good wide receiver and tight end. So now we are back up on the board here, and we do need one more bench spot before we draft a kicker and a defense. But again, not even going to draft a kicker or a defense here in this draft, because fuck that. You don't need defenses or kickers in Dynasty leagues. Again, guys, I apologize for not having kickers and defenses taken out of this. So we're back up on the board here. I'm willing to take a shot that Jordan Love does eventually start in the NFL. He was drafted with 1st round draft capital, and I think if something was to happen to Aaron Rodgers, Jordan Love would seat pretty well into this lineup. Again, we've never seen him play in the NFL yet, but it's worth the shot this late in a SuperFlex draft, especially since it's a Dynasty league and we could see him eventually starting in the NFL. Back up on the board, I think I can draft running backs and wide receivers and not draft a defense and a kicker, so we're going to end up doing that. We do kind of want some more running backs and wide receivers. I think tight end, I'm happy with the 2 I have now. Again, I do like Adam Troutman, though, with Jared Cook gone, but we're going to end up going here with a wide receiver that I like a decent amount, that's very safe, in Cole Beasley out of Buffalo. Now, he's never going to do something sexy and drop 1,500 yards, but he's probably going to get 900 yards and has potential to get like 6, 7, 8 touchdowns. While he's never done that in his career, scoring 8 touchdowns, I do think it's possible with how good this Buffalo offense is. And now I got the stack of Josh Allen and Cole Beasley on my team. So now we have 1 pick to go. I'm hopping back on the running back train, and I'm going to select a guy that I really like here in let me hit skip here. I hate how slow this website is. It's my computer is the reason why it's slow, because my computer is old as fuck. I got it when I started college in 2017. We are now in 2021. So we're going to go with my guy, Mike Davis. Now, there's obviously going to be someone drafted there. But if they go down, Mike Davis showed with Christian McCaffrey that he can be a workhorse running back in the NFL when the other guy goes down. So I'm going to be very happy in drafting Mike Davis here with my final pick in the fantasy football draft. Now I'm going to get a C because I didn't draft a kicker or a defense. Oh, fuck you, Nick, is what the fantasy pro is telling you. So our team, to recap: Josh Allen is our quarterback. Our SuperFlex is Justin Herbert. Our running backs are Aaron Jones and Joe Mixon. Our starting wideouts are Robert Woods and Jerry Jeudy. Our tight end is Irv Smith, and our flex is James Robinson. Our bench is comprised of Melvin Gordon, Mono Man Sam, Curtis Samuel, Gus Edwards, J.D. McKissic, Tylan Wallace, Hayden Hurst, Jordan Love. We got Cole Beasley and Mike Davis. Now, some interesting picks to go over right here, since I didn't really talk about them too much. Jimmy Garoppolo. What's going to happen with Jimmy G? Is he a starter in the NFL again? I don't know, but I think he's worth a shot in the 15th round, strictly because the Patriots may just call him up and he may become the quarterback next year. I really don't know. Cam Newton, to me, also worth a pick in the 16th round, but again, that's just really a one-year play, because I think after this year, if he plays not so hot in New England, he is probably done. Horsecock Drew Lock as well, a guy who I don't think will be a starter quarterback in the NFL. If he is this year, it'll probably be his final year in Denver. So thank you guys all so much for watching. If you guys did end up enjoying this Dynasty SuperFlex mock draft, please make sure that you hit that subscribe button down below. I love each and every single one of you motherfuckers. Have a great rest of your guys' day. As always, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Good boy.